Hey, while we're welcoming everybody back, I'm just going to take a quick moment to again thank all our participants, staff, and judges who made this event possible. Though this year looks different, we certainly made the most of it, and we hope to continue to see this event grow each year and showcase the innovative research happening here. An extra special thank you to all of our participants. You did it. You can all breathe now. You made us proud with your hard work and dedication to both this competition and your research. These past few months have required countless hours of workshops, coaching, and practicing, all for 3 short minutes. You've put your research in the spotlight and made our community proud. So now the moment we've all been waiting for, I'm gonna welcome back our judges and we will hear who our finalists are.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. First of all, excellent work. We had a little bit of a tough time deciding on some people, but it was absolutely appreciated. It was a great afternoon and morning spent. Awesome. And I also apologize for the avatar name. This is one of those issues where my son uses this desktop for other things. And I hope it wasn't very distracting. But hey, farm animals were a part of some of the research. Okay, so the winners for Heat 1, after some deliberation, were Christine Flaherty and Timothy Hulbert. Congratulations to everyone else who also did a fantastic job.
Yay!
Awesome. So I'll be announcing the winners from Heat 2. I echo all of that. It was such a pleasure hearing about all of the research. It was really, really, really hard for us to decide, hence why we're a little late. So the winners for Heat 2 are Devontae Campbell and Rashid Desai.
Yay!
Thank you again for having all of us. We loved being here. For Heat 3, we are going to just mix it up a little bit by selecting 3 people because we really could not choose. So without further ado, I'm joking, I'll say it now, is Anna Espinoza, David McNabney, and Shirag Karia. So congratulations, everyone. You all were amazing and so glad that we got to participate today.
Yay!
Great work.
Well done, everybody. Well done.
Well done.
Thank you. Wow, that's so exciting. Great work, everybody. I'm so proud of all of you. I've seen all of your hard work, and you should all be so proud of yourselves just for getting through today and doing such an excellent job. I know how much work it is. So thank you again for attending today's heats. Congratulations to all of our participants and finalists. And please be sure to tune into the finals live stream on Thursday at 2:30 to cheer on your colleagues. Thank you, everyone.
Good job, Kate.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you to our organizers, all the participants, and our judges. It was a great event, so thank you again.
Thanks.